the two songs, and then throughout the readings, although as I'll talk to you a little later, because of what's happened, especially at the U.S. Supreme Court, we're not going to read as much as we used to read about the Constitution, because some of it is pretty hollow now. But I brought a couple of the cases, and we might have people read from some of the cases, especially the immunity case and the homeless case. And so we're going to need a lot of readers, but we're reading some other stuff this year because we have to adjust to the reality. Okay, Grannies, take it away.
Alice? Okay,
let's take back our Constitution, page 1.
Wait, you know what? I think I need you on this.
People can join in.
Anyone need a song sheet?
There are more song sheets if folks want them.
Can we make it a circle if everybody backs up and rounds around?
But we need to make it an open circle to welcome people to the audience.
Don't close the donut. Open it up.
Open circle, open.
The audience over there and the grannies back here, please.
Open, so you move here or there, so people can feel like they
Good luck.
not closed. This is still a closed
The
circle.
grannies are over here and the audience is over there.
Anybody have any extra cats?
Cats? I don't know.
Okay.
All right, we're going to start.
1, 2, 3. Take it away.
Let's take back our Constitution.
Wait,
Hold on.
we start.
Wait for mercy.
Let's take back our Constitution. Voting rights under attack. We can't have books on race and gender and or unwarranted wiretaps. Welcome! Presidents deporting thousands, denying immigrants their rights. We must not tolerate abuse of our asylum seekers. Time now to organize and fight. We demanded of our Congress, this country must stop making war. Building U.S. bases globally, while people there call for no more. The U.S. must stand up for ceasefire, ban their weapons right away. We need peace and civil rights to occupy the world and bring change to all the USA. Leaking Moses don't give weapons used to violate human rights. We fund bombing dozen families, destroy all essentials for life. How can we claim our Constitution while we're breaking our own law? Billions fund Israeli government, scourge of Gaza's people. Time now to rise and say no more!
Okay, one more.
All right, we have more song sheets coming. Give us a minute. Please join in.
One more.
Okay.
No additions are necessary. All singers are welcome.
They'll just put them all. There's 4 pages. Stamp. Alice?
Which one?
Next one. Stamp.
Still page. Stamp. Page 1. Bottom.
1, 2, 3, sing. Stamp goes CFC court, leaving everyone to rot. First they attack women's self-care, now the water and the air. The only right that's left is to get shot. Obscene court smash the affirmative action. Student loan and forgiveness law. They uphold the spirit. based on sexual orientation. These sluts from the judges must be stopped. Time is no taking money. People, it's time to take a stand. All the values we espouse, time to save this burning house. Dumb, rotten judges all across the land.
Metro Raging Grannies, New York City.
So, and the public, you're invited to join. So, for many years on the 4th of July, I have, usually in a public park, read the Constitution, the Declaration, and the Bill of Rights. And starting around 2007, people joined in Central Park. We started at Strawberry Fields. Now we're here in front of the Women's Suffragettes. And we have the Granny Peace Brigade and the Raging Grannies. And what we generally do is read a lot of the parts of the Declaration, the Constitution, and the 27 Amendments. But today, we're not going to do that. Today is different. It's different because of what's happening in our country. And it is our country. And so, what we want to do today is read some relevant parts of those documents, but we also want to read at least a couple of the Supreme Court decisions, especially the immunity one. It really changes a lot
Be scared.
about what America is. Yes, it's a clear and present danger to our democracy. And if time allows, I want to have a discussion about some of these cases. I want to talk about how the Supreme Court, and you'll hear this over and over again, 6-3, the ideological split, and what does that mean for us, for other Americans? We live in New York, it's a bubble. That's not what the rest of America is about. So how do we relate to that, and what's the future? So we'll do readings, but they won't be necessarily primarily on the documents, because we have to recognize something is changing and we have to adjust to it. And in the immunity case, there's a lot of nuances, and therefore I think it's important that we understand some of these nuances, because that's going to determine what's an official act, what's not an official act. So with that, let's begin. So with regard to the Declaration of Independence, I would like someone to come up and read a couple of the parts of the Declaration, and then we'll move on to certain parts of the Constitution. So it's ever in yellow, and she has a great voice, you'll hear.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, rich white laborers, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form.
Well, wait, but I want you to conclude it, the last paragraph, which is the independence.
We therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are and of right out to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do.
All right, well, thank you.
Available for all opera, Shakespeare, B-movies, and children's parties.
That's a hard act to follow, but I know there's some people here who can match that. All right, so before we go on to the Constitution, I just want to add one thing. The irony in the Declaration of Independence, and in the past we would go through all the indictments against King George. And isn't it ironic that in view of the Supreme Court decision the other day, which we'll talk about in a little while, there will be quotes from the dissenters. Thank God those women are there, because they're talking about that decision is going to bring back a king, possibly King Donald. That should be very dangerous to people. All right, now we're going to go to the Constitution. So I need at least one or two people to come up. We want to read the preamble, and then we want to talk about what the Constitution says about the executive branch of government. Do I see someone shake? Come on up.
And for those who don't know or new to the circle, this is Norman Siegel, civil rights attorney, who has our MC for the fall.
And then I'll give you the opportunity.
The Constitution of the United States of America. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America.
So the key word I want to point out, where they talk about to form a more perfect union, and therefore we are in that journey. It began 248 years ago, but we ain't there yet. We don't have that perfect union yet. All right, so now we're going to go to Article 2, and there's a few sections which talks about the executive branch of government, which is the presidency.
Article 2 of the Constitution, Section 1, the executive power shall be vested in a President of the United States of America. He shall hold his office during the term of 4 years. He shall hold his office during the term of 4 years, and together with the Vice President, chosen for the same term, be elected as follows.
All right, you're good. Just read these two.
He shall have power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States, except in cases of impeachment. The President, Vice President,
Listen
and
carefully.
Section 4, the President, Vice President, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors.
All right, well, I got you. One more part. This is Article 5, which, if you listen to it, this could become relevant in our future.
Happy 4th of July, folks. We are reading from the Constitution of the United States.
Yes. Article 5 of the Constitution of the United States of America. The Congress, whenever 2/3 of both houses shall deem it necessary, shall propose amendments to this Constitution, or on the application of the legislatures of 2/3 of the several states, shall call a convention for proposing amendments, which in either case shall be valid to all intents and purposes as part of this Constitution, when ratified by the legislatures of 3/4 of the several states, or by conventions in 3/4 thereof, as the one or the other mode of ratification may be proposed by the Congress.
So this could be important. A lot of people say it can't be done, but there's a framework to change what the Constitution is all about. That's Article 5. Article 5 of the Constitution. All right, so now we're going to go to the Bill of Rights. I want to do the First Amendment. I want to do the 14th and the 15th Amendment. So do I have a volunteer? Okay, come on up.
This is Adele.
Hi, Adele. First Amendment, very important.
Congress shall make no law
no law
respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances.
So that, wait, stay here. What was that? That was do some more. First Amendment. That amendment allows us to do exactly what we're doing now. And in other places you can't do that. We can still do this as of today. Okay, so here's the 14th Amendment and then the 15th.
No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protections of the laws.
So the two main concepts there, due process of law means fundamental fairness. If the government does something that is fundamentally unfair, that constitutional provision allows us to challenge that government action. And equal protection means that everyone is treated the same. That has never happened in America yet, but that's the goal. And some of us will continue to do it as long as we're alive to make them live by those words. The 15th Amendment.
The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude.
All right. So the last, thank you so much. The last amendment is the 27th Amendment, and that was passed on May 7th, 1992. So it was 32 years ago. But there are already people talking about whether we should have new amendments. Some from one side of the spectrum, some from the other. But this is the process that keeps the Constitution allegedly a live document. Okay, let's have another song.
We want equality. We want our choices free. On this we all agree. Women are changeable, and this world needs a change. We'll all try to arrange to change the world. Civil rights must prevail for every male and female. Poverty must go. Let's make it so. Let's make it so. Women are powerful. Let's make new policy. Let's keep abortion free with full legality. Women are powerful, and we will take a stand. Peace must be our demand. Stop funding war. Civil rights must prevail for every male and female. Poverty must go. Let's make it so. Let's make it so. Let's make it so.
New York Brigade and Grannies.
There's a song by Nora Freeman. Can we do one more about the homeless? You've been working on that.
We're gonna, when I get to the homeless case, then I can...
Okay, we're going to do that one. You discuss it.
Folks, you're flipping to page 2, right to be heard.
No, right to be heard is on page 3. Okay, we're going to do the homeless song. Right to be heard, Alice.
Family
Just a note. First note, page 2.
Top of page 2.
Without the right to protest, where would we be? There'd be no rights for women yet, or extremist judges rule. They bludgeon women's health care, support daily fossil fuel. Good people see what's going on. Find power in the word. The right to speak for what is right. Your right is to be heard. Restricting ways we protest, they're trampling on our rights. When students rise against genocide, their futures crushed by might. Good people see what's going on, find power in the word. The right to speak for what is right, your right is to be heard. Our right is to be heard.
Grannies are in fine shape today. So it leads in, especially that last song, to about the Supreme Court. So before we go to what they've done in the last couple of weeks, I want to go back a couple of years to put it in context. First of all, when we take a look at the Supreme Court, we first need to remember that, for example, in 2002, they overruled Roe versus Wade, the right for reproductive freedom, the right to choice, the right to abortion. In the case Dobbs versus Jackson's Women's Health Organization, by a vote of 6-3. That was undoing a precedent that was in America for 49 years. So you talk about a half a century, and these 6 judges, 5 men, 1 woman, it's gone. And also in 2022, in a case out of New York, the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association case, which held that states with strict limits on carrying guns in public, which is what New York was trying to do, the court said that that violated the Second Amendment by the vote of
6-3.
You'll see this as a pattern. In 2023, dealing with affirmative action, and remember, in 1980 there was the case, if I remember, out of Virginia, where it said actually that affirmative action based on race in a public works program where they set aside 10% of the contracts, public contracts, to minority-owned businesses was constitutional. I think it was even written by Warren Burger, who was the chief judge at that point. So in 2023, in cases brought against Harvard and the University of North Carolina, the court said, you can't do that anymore. We're not going to allow preferential treatment based on race. So there it is. That case, they threw it out. 43 years precedent, gone by a vote of
6-3.
All right, this is a good audience, that's for sure. All right, so I could be here all afternoon talking about the last few weeks by the Supreme Court. I don't want to do that. But I did choose a half a dozen to highlight, and then 2 of them we'll try to read some of the cases. First of all, 1, they overruled the district court and the circuit court. So in the federal system, you go to the district court first. Then if you want to appeal, there are circuit courts. In New York, it's the Second Circuit. In D.C., it's the District of Columbia Circuit. That's the Court of Appeals. Then you can go to the top, which is the Supreme Court of the United States. So they, on the case where the lower court and the circuit court said that there is no absolute immunity and everyone has to apply to the rule of law. A president is not exempt from that. So what did the Supreme Court do? They held that there was substantial immunity from prosecution to the President of the United States by a vote of
6-3.
Oh my God, all right. They also, a little while ago, allowed Donald Trump to be on the ballot, even though the Constitution says if you're engaged in insurrections, you can't run for office.
And he was impeached.
But they went ahead And yes, he was impeached, but not convicted. And so in the context, they said he could be on the ballot. Now third, this one's a little tricky. Stay with me for a moment. They had held that prosecutors who brought the case against some of the people who were involved in conduct in storming the Capitol on January 6, 2021, that there was a provision in some of those cases where it talked about that you could not obstruct an official proceeding. And most of us figured, all right, so when they made the Senate and the House stop for 8 hours before they could confirm the election, that was obstructing an official proceeding. But the way the court interpreted the words obstructing unofficial proceedings, it came out of the Enron case years ago. That case was where people interfered, impaired, destroyed evidence, documents. So they said, that's not what this was. But then you kind of say, wait a minute, this is the classic official proceeding. So they threw those charges out. Now the implication for that is...
Happy 4th of July. We are reading and discussing the Constitution if you folks would like to join.
But they're on a walking tour. We'll work it out. Thank you.
You're welcome to join. We are reading and discussing the Constitution of the United States.
People, they don't care about that. That's our challenge. That's our challenge, folks. So that case means that some of those people who, in fact, are in jail and are sentenced, they have a right now to discuss and ask the court to reconsider the penalties. But even more important, or equally important, is that in the election interference case by the special prosecutor in the District of Columbia, where Donald Trump is one of the defendants, it's possible that 2 of the charges against him might, because of that decision, disappear. And so that's another dangerous decision. And finally, not finally, but the court ruled the other day that the 8th Amendment prohibition against cruel and unusual punishment is not violated if a state or a municipality decides to criminalize people who experience homelessness by sleeping in a public place, even if there's no place for them to sleep, which was the fact pattern in that town in Oregon. And the vote was
6-3.
That's where our song comes from.
And the next 2, I'll just be brief. The court reduced the other day the power of federal agencies to regulate matters involving and including the environment, medications, consumer issues. They overruled what was called the Chevron decision, which had previously said that a court should defer to the government agencies to interpret the laws that are not clear. By what vote?
6-3.
God, so it seems to me that there's a pattern there, 6-3. We have to figure out what that pattern is.
What do we do about it?
Partisan.
Finally, there's, I didn't have time to go through, but I recommend that if you have some time in the next few days, there's a wonderful column today in the New York Times about the abortion case that has much to say about this court. It's by Linda Greenhouse, who covered the Supreme Court for the New York Times for a long time. I'd like someone just to read a little of what she wrote, and so you get a flavor of what they're saying here. Somebody want to do that? Okay, Joan? Just read the yellow stuff. This is Joan Burbank.
Save the next one for Andy.
It was a decision not to decide. I'm referring to the court's dismissal.
Louder, please,
Gotta be
Joan.
louder.
I'm referring to the court's dismissal of the case about whether.
Maybe come here.
Okay.
There you go.
Now on stage.
Okay. was a decision not to decide. I'm referring to the court's dismissal of the case about whether Idaho can violate federal law by barring hospitals from performing emergency abortions for women whose pregnancies present a severe threat, not necessarily to their life, but to their health and fertility. Last Thursday, 9 weeks after hearing the argument, the court dismissed the case as improvidently granted, meaning that the court, upon reflection, should not have accepted the case for review. Idaho's Defensive Life Act.
Louder, Joan.
Idaho's Defensive Life Act permits abortion only to save a woman's life or in cases of rape or incest, while a federal law, the Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act, requires hospitals to provide medically indicated emergency care for any condition, either by treating the patient in the emergency room or by arranging a transfer to another hospital. In those circumstances, the federal district court held the 38-year-old federal law preempted Idaho's abortion ban.
Right, so what that's about is that the federal law said that in addition to rape or incest, that a woman who wanted an abortion could get it, and the hospital had to provide it. Idaho decided, in my opinion, to try to circumvent that by passing its own law. And the federal court, the first level, said Idaho can't do that. So then they took an appeal. And while the appeal was to the second level, the circuit court, the Supreme Court came in and took the case and said, we're going to decide this case. And then they had an argument about 3 or 4 weeks ago. And then the other day, it appears, and what this is saying is that maybe there was some manipulation here by one of the justices. She suggested it was Alito. That's a good possibility. And that potentially she's saying this should let everybody know what was going on in the court internally, because what eventually happened is that in a very unusual situation, maybe once a year that happens, where the court takes the case, but then they say, before they write a decision, we made a mistake, we shouldn't have taken it, and they send it back. So then it means that maybe some of those people from the 6 decided not to go along with what they thought one of the judges wanted them to do. I don't know, but I think that's a very interesting kind of thinking as to maybe they're within the 6, there's now a little dissent there. Because one thing about this court this year, which is very unusual, when someone writes a majority decision, there's sometimes a dissent, not always. But a lot what's happened now is when there's a majority decision, there's what's called concurring opinions, which means that even within the 6, there's now some who don't agree with the rationale. They agree with the result, but not the rationale. Maybe a sliver of hope, but I'm not asking anyone to go to the bank on that. But it's something to be recognized.
So in this case, they dropped it back to the district?
They send it back to the circuit court.
But in the meantime, the Supreme Court stopped all emergency abortion care in the meantime for this case that they shouldn't have taken.
Yeah, in Idaho, the hospitals actually put a woman on a plane who had complications. They wouldn't abide by the Supreme Court.
Right, so all of that is true, but what I'm saying is that we just have to keep abreast of whatever there is, and even if there's a sliver, and whether and you'll see even on this one, and I want to spend some time. I think one of the most serious decisions that came down this past week was the one on immunity. I think it's a clear and present danger to the constitutional democracy that we allegedly have. And so I bracketed off, thanks to the New York Times, where they've highlighted some of the language of that case. So I'd like 1 or 2 people to come up and read some of it, and then we can talk like what we just did here on the abortion matter. Okay, so are there some people who want to read some stuff here? Okay, come on up, introduce yourself. So do. You want?
Yeah.
I'll read. Oh, sure. Okay, no.
Come on.
No, I just turned my back when someone said that. Someone else wants to turn my back on you, please. Okay, so read 1, 2. Okay? There's the opinion of the court. Listen to what they're saying.
So we conclude that under our constitutional structure of separated powers, the nature of presidential power requires that a former president have some immunity from criminal prosecution for official acts during his tenure in office. At least with respect to the president's exercise of his core constitutional powers, this immunity must be absolute. As for his remaining official actions, he is also entitled to immunity. At the current stage of proceedings, in this case, however, we do not decide whether immunity must be absolute, or instead whether presumptive immunity is sufficient.
Okay. So I'd like someone to come up to read some of the dissent. Do I have someone? Okay. So read this, and then I'm going to give you something else right after that.
Looking beyond the fate of this particular prosecution, the long-term consequences of today's decision are stark. The court effectively creates a law existed since the founding. This new official act's immunity lies about like a loaded weapon for any president that wishes to place his own interests, his own political survival, or his own financial gain above the interests of the nation.
Law-free zone called Trump.
This is another paragraph from Sotomayor's dissent, and then one from Jackson.
Today's decision to grant former presidents criminal immunity reshapes the institution of the presidency, she wrote. It makes a mockery of the principle, foundation of our Constitution and system of government, that no man is above the law. In her own dissent, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson wrote that the court has now declared for the first time in history that the most powerful official in the United States can, under circumstances yet to be fully determined, become a law unto himself.
And I want to just have one more quote if I can find it. And that, I will call that a Biden moment on my part. Sotomayor says the relationship between the president and the people he serves has shifted irrevocably in every use of official power. The president is now a king above the law. And then she concludes, with fear for our democracy, I dissent. I today, July 4, 2024, say, I dissent. I dissent. All right. Okay. So now, I'd like someone to come up. There were 2 letters to the editor yesterday in the Times that I think capture what's going on here. Okay, introduce yourself, read the first one, which is a little funny but serious one, and then a more serious one. Sure.
My name is Tristan.
Loudly, Tristan.
Of course. To the editor. Without a shot being fired, the Supreme Court majority has reversed the results of our Revolutionary War. The Tories have won. Donald Trump and those that follow him will be our kings. Happy 4th. H1A, Berkeley, California.
We got one from the West Coast, and now we got one from the East Coast.
Well, the Tories are going to lose today in the UK.
So we'll all go back to the UK.
Well, listen to this one. This is a much more serious one. I know the lawyer.
To the editor. My take on the Supreme Court is that it has become lawless. It is now above the law. Ideology and not reasoned legal analysis has become the driving force of the highest court in the land. It is not possible that virtually every case with widespread social and cultural implications is decided along conservative versus liberal lines unless the law and principles of stare decisis unless the law and principles of stare decisis have been replaced by knee-jerk allegiances to a particular political party and its core ideology. I now believe that the members of the conservative majority of the court are intellectually dishonest and have uniformly dishonored their oaths to obey the Constitution. They are carrying out personal agendas that have nothing to do with the established legal principles or the welfare and well-being of this country. That is scary. Peter Alcalay, Scarsdale, New York.
All right, so now what we're going to do is look at the case on the homeless. So why don't we, before we look at the case, why don't we do the song on the homeless?
Page 1. People are homeless because they can't pay the rents that their greedy landlords demand, or they were murdered out of an apartment that was a death trap of landlord's plan. Contact like you are a crime on the streets, and you should be doing time because you got no home, got no home. Homeless and hungry, freeze in the winter, roast in the summer, it's all stress and strife. Let's build new housing for impoverished people, fix the old buildings, now that's
What we're going to do is we're going to have some readings of the majority opinion and the dissent. And lo and behold, I was surprised. The vote was
6-3!
Oh my God, something's happened there. Okay, Michael, you want to come up and read the... You can't? Okay, all right. Well, Sherry, you want to come up and read the majority opinion? Come on. Maybe you can read both.
I'd rather read the dissent.
So do the bracket.
All right. Justice Gorsuch delivered the opinion of the court. Many cities across the American West face a homelessness crisis. If adopted, certain restrictions against encampments on public property. The Ninth Circuit, however, held that the Eighth Amendment's cruel and unusual punishments clause barred that last measure. With support from states and cities across the country, Grants Pass urged this court to review the Ninth Circuit's decision. We take up that task now. Homelessness is complex. Its causes are many. So may be the public policy responses required to address it. At bottom, the question this case presents is whether the Eighth Amendment grants federal judges primary responsibility for assessing those causes and devising those responses. It does not. Yes, people will disagree over which policy responses are best. They may experiment with one set of approaches, only to find later another set works better. They may find certain responses more appropriate for some communities than others. But in our democracy, that is their right. Nor can a handful of federal judges begin to, quote, match the collective wisdom the American people possess in deciding, quote, how best to handle a pressing social question like homelessness.
And so now, what they're trying to do is to kind of take the position that we're just judges, let the people decide, which is basically saying, let the local government, not the people, decide, because most people would want to help the homeless. Sometimes the local governments, they don't want to do that because of the cost involved or the fact that they haven't been able to figure out where's the adequate housing. They didn't plan adequate housing, and especially affordable. So Sotomayor, she's really becoming a hero in Neon more and more. So I need someone, you want to do it? I'll do it. Okay. Just read the dissent and you'll see the difference, especially when she talks about they're just judges. So just read the bracketed stuff for her.
Sleep is a biological necessity, not a crime. for some people, sleeping outside is their only option. The city of Grants Pass jails and fines those people for sleeping anywhere in public at any time, including in their cars, if they use as little as a blanket to keep warm or a rolled up shirt as a pillow. For people with no access to shelter, that punishes them for being homeless.
Will do.
That is unconscionable and unconstitutional. Punishing people for their status is cruel and unusual under the Eighth Amendment.
Okay, wait. So what they did is they would give people civil fines. I think it was like $275, then went up to $550, even though they had no money. And after the second time, if they were still out there, and again, they had no place to sleep in that particular town, they could go to jail for 30 days. So,
for $1,000 a day for us.
Exactly.
So, see how she takes on their argument about we're just judges and we got to leave it to the local government.
Do the whole paragraph?
Yeah, the whole paragraph. She's great.
Homelessness in America is a complex and heartbreaking crisis. People experiencing homelessness face immense challenges, as do local and state governments. Especially in the face of these challenges, this court has an obligation to apply the Constitution faithfully and even-handedly. The Eighth Amendment prohibits punishing homelessness by criminalizing sleeping outside when an individual has nowhere else to go. It is cruel and unusual to apply any penalty, quote, selectively to minorities whose numbers are few, who are outcasts of society, and who are unpopular, but whom society is willing to see suffer through it, would not countenance general application of the same penalty across the board, unquote, Furman versus Georgia.
I need someone to finish the line. This is the optimism.
This is Douglas J. concurring. I remain hopeful that our society will come together to address the complexities of the homelessness challenge facing the most vulnerable among us, ante 1834. That responsibility is shared by those vulnerable populations, the states and cities in which they reside, and each and every one of us. It is only after we begin to see that we begin to see a street as our street, a public park as our park, a school as our school, that we can become engaged citizens, dedicating our time and resources to worthwhile causes. M. Desmond, Evicted, Property and Profit in the American City. This court has a role to play in faithfully enforcing the Constitution to prohibit punishing the very existence of those without shelter. I remain hopeful that someday in the near future, this court will play its role in safeguarding constitutional liberties for the most vulnerable among us. Because today, the court abdicates that role. I respectfully dissent.
I dissent!
I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus.
Okay, so we have another song.
Page 2, when the people go marching in. That's bottom left, page 2.
prison industrial complex?
And then the
Okay, so page 2 and then page 3. 1, 2, sing. Oh, when the people go marching in. Sing with us. Oh, when the people go marching in. Oh, yes, I want to be in that number. When the people go marching in. Now when the people rise to act. Now when the people rise to act. Oh, yes, I want to be in that number. When the people rise to act. In solidarity. In solidarity. We sound the call. We sound the call. In solidarity. We sound the call. Oh, yes, I want to be in that number. Solidarity. In solidarity. We sound the call. When we make peace instead of war. When we make peace instead of war. I will work to make that happen. When we make peace instead of war. When all the world has human rights. When all the world has human rights. When all the world has human rights. I will work to make that happen. When all the world has human
One other thing that we do each year, we've been doing it with the Grannies and the Raging Grannies for 17 years now. I've been doing it for 56 years.
Whoa!
I'm only 57 years old. So one of the things we do is to stop towards the end of the program and look back. Whoever of the Grannies is no longer with us. Mercy, do you want to talk about Colleen?
They're crying.
That's
fine. Corinne Willinger! Corinne Willinger was amazing. She was a teacher. She was a friend. I knew her for 22 years. And she wrote a lot of the Raging Grannies songs. She went to the unconventions. A lot of the Raging Grannies all over the nation are mourning her passing. But she was 96. She was our sage, and she was an amazing lady. And she
still
could play.
beautiful.
And still beautiful. She was always beautiful. She was always generous. She was always like, "Did you eat lunch? Did you have money for lunch?" And I was like, "I'm fine." She always tried to take care of everybody. And she was a lovely person. I'm privileged to have spent so much time with her.
Thank you.
Corinne Willinger!
Viney Burroughs. Viney was the first black woman to act in a Broadway musical, did hundreds if not thousands of shows all around the world, died this year at age 99. Woo! Viney Burroughs!
Rest in power!
So let me conclude. Here's my good friend Bill Dobbs. Bill Dobbs, I want to tell you all, is a wonderful advocate, a lawyer, and in 2004, he gave me this as a gift. I keep it all the time.
That's a real pocket.
It's a real pocket. So let me conclude, and then we'll have 1 or 2 more songs with the Grannies. We want our country, it is our country, to uphold what it provides for in the Declaration of Independence,
Louder, Norman,
the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights, and especially the 13th, 14th, and the 15th Amendments. We want everyone to treat everyone the same, regardless of the differences. Respect for freedom, respect for justice, respect for equality, and respect for fairness for all, not just some. And fairly and justly guarantee that the rule of law applies to everyone, including elected officials and including the president of our country. And we need respect and uphold the principles and values of democracy. On this 4th of July, 2024, in my opinion, more than ever, We need to continue to participate in peaceful protests, marches, rallies, and events like this. And most important, continue to speak up. We must persevere. Read those documents that we mentioned today. Be informed of what these documents provide. Please, please do not give up. Again, this is our country. We need the stamina. We need to persevere and make a positive impact in our journey, which, as we started with the Constitution, which talks about the journey for a more perfect union. We will get there someday. Thank you.
And go to Union Square at 2 o'clock.
That's right. How about forming a new nation?
What's up, the world? Vision Industrial Complex.
We're going to take the...
Wait a minute, just a minute. We have a sheet here. Who else
I
has
made 50 copies. It wasn't enough this year. All right, Alex is ready now. Sing for the climate.
We need to wake up. We need to wise up. We need to open up our eyes and do it now, now, now. We need to build a better future. And we need to start right now. We're on a planet that has a problem. We've got to solve it, get involved and do it now, now, now. We need to build a better future. And we need to start right now. Let's make it greener. Let's make it cleaner. Let's make it last, make it fast, and do it now, now, now. We need to build a better future. And we need to start right now. The U.S. military is the worst fossil fuel emitter. Foul, foul, foul. We must detoxify the planet. We must demilitarize right now. No point in waiting or hesitating. We must get wise, take more lives, do it now, now, now. We need to build a better future. And we need to start right now. We need to build a better future. And we need to start right now.
Thank you, Norman Siegel.
One more. Thank you, Norman. Thank you, Grannies.
One more. Vision Industrial Complex, top of page 3.
Physical Industrial Complex.
Top of page 3, Prison Industrial Complex.
An Alice Sutter
to the
song.
tune, The Halls of Montezuma.
And now a word from our corporate sponsor. Alice, give us this. 1, 2, 3. From the cells of Rikers Island to California's SHU, we are locking down the people. We can make some room for you. Folks of color, Muslims, immigrants, now we're activists on hand. We keep our corporations rich, prison industrial complex.
We can hold you without trial like Rikers detainees. Here at Rikers Island, we bring your riots.
That doesn't work.
We bring violence, filth, and negligence. People die awaiting trial. Despite your outcry, on we go with your uses, cruel and vile. From the cells of Rikers Island to California's SHU, we are locked
have a wonderful day. And again, I know everyone keeps calling on the day or two before, but I'll see you all July 4, 2025. So stay well.
New York, Brigade and Grannies, Norman Siegel.
And in between.